We are now into the top 40. If you tuned in and saw the kids who missed the cut, it's time for those who are on the correct side of Warchant's top 40 players for Florida State football in 2024. Alongside the managing editor of Warchant.com, he is Ira Schoffel. He helped compile this whole list. My name is Tom Lang, and it's time to bring you the players that are in Florida State's top 40. And Ira, the criteria for this, as a reminder to everybody out there, how you doing today, and then the criteria for how we put this list together. Is this about combine? Is this about speed? Or is this about something else?
Yeah, it's about something else. And I guess like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I'm sure all 7 of us panelists probably have slightly different ways of going about it. But the idea is not to pick the 40 best players or the 40 most talented players. The idea is the 40 players that we feel like, so you've got to come up with, we each come up with our own list of 40, the 40 players that we believe have the biggest chance to have an impact, the biggest impact on this team. So you start off with the top 5 or 10 players. Those probably are your most talented, most experienced top starters, quarterbacks, starting running backs, those kinds of guys. And then you start working your way down, and then you got to make decisions. Sometimes it's based on a position of need. Like maybe this linebacker is not the best linebacker in the world, but maybe he's so much better than everybody else you have that you put him a little bit higher. Or maybe if you've got a ton of offensive guards, maybe you don't value an starting offensive guard as high because you have other guys who can play that position. So there's a lot of that kind of going on here. But again, the idea is to the 40 most important, most impactful players, and everybody has their own list. And then we combine the 7 with our grading scale, and then we come up with the composite list.
So that list, again, the panelists this year, 7 panelists. This is the order that we have it in our little sheet behind the scenes. Matt Lasser, Jeff Cameron, myself, Corey Clark, Gene Williams, Aslan Hadravandi, and, of course, Ira, right here on the right side of the screen. So with that said, let's put it up on the screen here. Here we go. We don't actually have a number 40 ranked player. It's a tie at 39 this year with a defensive tackle and a tight end. 2 new arrivals, in fact, on the bottom of the screen there, between transfer Grady Kelly and early enrollee tight end Landon Thomas. We'll get to Landon in just a minute. I'm just going to read off this list for people that we have on the podcast feed because we do put these on audio as well. Number 36 is Quindarius Jones at corner. Number 37 is running back Kaziah Holmes. I look forward to speaking on Kaziah. I've got thoughts on him. Number 38, defensive tackle Daniel Lyons. Number 39, this is a tie, is defensive tackle Grady Kelly. He's the transfer, and of course Landon Thomas also at number 39. So, Ira, this is a bit that I think we're going to roll out a little bit more often this year. It's called Explain Yourself, and there's a little video clip.
No rational person would do as you have done. Explain yourself.
And that clip demands that you explain yourself because Landon Thomas, as a true freshman, you have him just outside your top 25. Most of us on staff have him in the top 40, which is high praise for a true freshman. But number 26 on the list, nobody else in the top 35 for Landon Thomas. State your case, man.
First of all, Landon, I'm your guy. You wouldn't have made the top 40 or the top 39 without my vote. So just remember that, Landon, is you're catching all those touchdowns in 2024. To me, it's a combination of 2 things. One, I thought he was super impressive. I think we all did. Everyone that watched him in practice this spring as an early enrollee, he's very impressive. I mean, there's a reason some people thought he was the number 1 tight end in the country last year. But a couple things that made me believe he's going to be a big part of this offense were, some of the things he did as a pass catcher, his combination of size and speed. And then he showed some physicality that I was surprised by. I mean, he looks like a grown man. A lot of times guys come in when they're true freshmen and they might have a ton of talent, might have a great frame. They're going to be great at some point in their career, but they come in looking like a freshman. I don't think Landon Thomas looks like a freshman. I think he's put on weight since he's been in Tallahassee. I've seen some physicality out of him. I don't know that he's ready to take on defensive ends one-on-one, but I think he's a willing blocker. And I think because he's uniquely skilled in that tight end group, I think he's going to be out there a ton. I think he's going to be out there a lot with Kyle Morlock. And I think when you look at those other tight ends, Jackson West is probably your number 2 tight end on this team because of what he can do as a blocker and probably all around. But I have a feeling Landon Thomas is actually going to make more big plays and be a bigger factor in the passing game. So I gave him the nod, and I put him up high because I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities, and I think he's ready for it.
I could see it. Again, this is not a loaded wide receiver room, so if you're talking about formations that Florida State's going to roll out there could be some larger bodies, and the tight end position in Mike Norvell's offense is so varied there's a slot in terms of skill set that Landon Thomas fits that maybe Florida State doesn't have. If Ira's right on this one, just ask him for stock advice next January and February, because he's buying low on Landon Thomas. Next up is Grady Kelly on that list, defensive tackle from Colorado State. This guy has to be a part of the top 4, we would think, in terms of that defensive tackle rotation. Ira, everybody on staff had him around the same area, and so this is a very kind of, I'd call it chalk result for Grady Kelly. Your thoughts on him and maybe the work that he's going to get done in the summer and in the fall in terms of development for Florida State, and where you think he's going to slot out?
Yeah, I think what we saw at him in the spring was that he's what Florida State probably thought they were getting when they brought him out of Colorado State, where he had started 22 games the last 3 years, was not a dominant player out there. I think he was second team all conference, according to at least one service. I think Phil Steele had him second team all conference. And, he's a guy, like you said, he'll be a rotation piece. I didn't think he was markedly better in terms of like upside over like a KJ Sampson. And to me, that's why I didn't value him as high as maybe sometimes a second team defensive tackle might be valued higher. I just think that they've got a lot of guys kind of that are similar in terms of their ability to help in that second and third team defensive line. I think you got him, Daniel Lyons, and that's why I also didn't have Daniel Lyons super high either. I just think a lot of those guys are pretty interchangeable. I like KJ Sampson a lot. Tomiwa. How about that, Tom Lang? Tomiwa Durajaye is the West Virginia transfer, is also, I think, going to be in that mix. He played some end and tackle in the spring. So I don't love their overall depth at defensive tackle, but I also, I think he's a nice piece of it, but I wasn't blown away by him in the spring.
I put too much weight in what I see in practices. So for me, typically guys in the trenches are much higher, like relative to the staff. Like, for example, Grady Kelly, I have all the way up at 31. One of the higher, slots on the staff for him. I know that Corey has him in the 20s as well at 29. And I've got Daniel Lyons on my list at 33. And so, again, Daniel Lyons comes in just ahead of Grady Kelly. This is largely on the strength, Daniel Lyons' ranking, of 2 staff members, Matt and Jeff, having him at 25. They've got him really, really high. And my guess would be the thinking there is, if you lose Darrell Jackson or Josh Farmer for a series or two, who's the next guy up? They think it's Daniel Lyons because of his ability to be disruptive. That has to be the reason. Ira, this is not somebody who's 350 pounds who's just going to take on 2 blockers and be a run stuffer. Daniel Lyons is more of an athlete that plays defensive tackle. I know he didn't make your cut. I'm one of 3 to have him on the list, but that has to be the reasoning behind why Daniel Lyons would make your list. Grady Kelly is a little bit more of a run stopper. Daniel could be making more plays, more impactful plays, maybe as a pass rusher on third down, interior pass rusher on third down, that type of player. But what have you seen out of Daniel Lyons?
Yeah, and I think he's listed 6'4", 290, so that body type is what you're talking about there. And I think, if you based it on, if we were sitting back here a year or two ago, you and I were super high on Daniel Lyons. I think we watched him in practice and we're impressed by some of the way he won some of those one-on-one pass rushing drills, even as a true freshman, and certainly last year at times. And he played a good bit last year. He was in that rotation at defensive tackle, so that's valuable. When you've got guys coming back that have played defensive tackle at this level, it's a big thing. So I think he's important. I just didn't think he had a great spring. Like I was looking for more based on, again, what we saw at him a couple years ago. I thought by now he'd be kind of making the leaps we saw Josh Farmer make. And I just haven't seen that. I think the talent is there, and maybe he was slowed by something in the spring. I just don't know, but I thought he would be a more impactful player in the spring. So that's why I didn't go with him, because I think they've got a lot of other guys that are going to be on that second team defense and second team offense that are going to make a big impact. So that's just kind of, he's in a group of guys. I probably had 10 or 12 of them that in most years I think would have been no doubt in the top 40, but there's a glut. Like once you pass 25, there's like 25 or 30 guys left that are all kind of fighting for those positions in the top 40.
So we go up next to the running back position, slotted at 37. This is Kaziah Holmes, and I've got a cop to this. We'll play the clip because I need to explain myself.
No rational person would do as you have done. Explain yourself.
Only 4 staff members out of our 7 panelists put Kaziah Holmes on their list, Ira. Only one put him as high as 21, and that was me. Everybody else has Kaziah more towards the fringe.
You love Kaziah.
I do. And this is my Landon Thomas style pick. And I go to war. I go to bat for him. I'm kind of blasphemous when it comes to the running back rankings compared to the rest of the staff. I have Kaziah as my top running back. I have Toafili down at 22. And
wow.
It's because the room is loaded. I think it waters down everything. It's not about Lawrence's lack of skills, or I'm cool on Lawrence, while everybody else is saying that he's going to be a big-time player. I think they're all going to be big-time players. I got Roydell Williams right in that mess together. As I just put them all together in a group. I said, I don't know. They're going to sort themselves out. But what I did see from Kaziah Holmes in limited action last fall was some of the breakaway speed and also the ability to run over guys that I don't know that Florida State has in a whole ton of a lot of other players. Like, I think Roydell Williams 100% can run dudes over and make players miss in open fields, but I don't know that he can pull away the way that Kaziah can. Toafili has the speed and he's got the hands, and I think he's going to be an incredibly important player for those reasons. But I don't know that he can run a dude over the way that Kaziah Holmes can. And I was very impressed, Ira. This is probably where I'm putting a little bit too much weight. But his skills in pass protection, at least in the showcase, the way he blitz pickup, the way he handled linebackers one-on-one and was able to drive them back, I think he's going to gain a lot of trust from the coaches. And so, therefore, I think he's going to gain a lot of reps. Maybe 21 is a little bit high for Kaziah Holmes. Certainly compared to the rest of the staff, it's 100% too high. But Kaziah, you're welcome. You would not have made this list had I not put you all the way up at number 21. Why am I nuts, Ira, to have Kaziah that high?
I don't think you are, but you outlined exactly the conundrum, I guess, with that running back group is, like, spoiler alert, Cam Davis didn't make our list, and I think we might be kicking ourselves at the end of the year. I think they really like Cam Davis. I think they're excited about what he could do. But the challenge is they have like 7 running backs. And so it's hard to know how those carries are going to split up. I think the rest of us went with Toafili higher because just it's the chalk. I mean, he's been in the system now for 5 years. He's also good in pass protection. People might not think it because of his size, but he'll put his nose in there. He knows all the protections. He's so talented in different ways as a pass catcher and as running back. I don't think he'll be off the field very much at all. I think if they want to get other running backs in, I think he may be out at wide receiver. And so that's why I would have him higher. Kaziah is a really nice player, man. There's no question. I don't dispute that. And I agree with you to the extent that he's probably more like a Trey Benson in terms of the breakaway speed and the power than anybody else maybe they have, other than maybe Cam Davis. But I just don't know that they're going to make that jump to him because they also have Toafili and they have Roydell Williams, and so I can't wait to see what they do with that running back room in terms of dividing carries. But at the end of the day, I still think Toafili is going to be the number one guy. But you make a good case, buddy. You make a good case.
Well, I don't know that it's going to be a case that's signed, sealed, and delivered in August or September. I think this is one you got to let this cook. This is something you let marinate for a little while. You let it stir, sit in the crock pot, and I think by the end of the season, maybe it does look wise. But I could be dead wrong. And in that January video, I've got to explain to myself again as to why I'm just so dead wrong. Quindarius Jones rounds out this particular segment, the 40 to 36 numbers, and you can find the written piece on warchant.com. Ira published that in the middle of the week. Quindarius Jones made 5 panelist lists. 2 panelists he did not make the top 44 were Matt Lasser and Ira Schoffel. His highest ranking was 29th. That was Aslan, who put him at 29. I had him personally, Ira, at 38, right on that fringe. So I think we're in line there. Just because you don't make the top 40 doesn't mean you weren't 41st or 42nd. Okay. This is somebody who could make a splash, but why did Quindarius just miss the cut for you in a year where Florida State's very deep?
Because I'm a dummy. No, he should have been kind of where you had him. I should have had him at least in the top 40. But again, man, I just kind of kept going back and forth. I kept moving people into that 30 to 40 and out of that top 30 to 40 and really just kind of kept juggling and going back and forth. I think the reason ultimately I left him off, sorry, Quindarius, is because they do have so many good corners. So to me, if he wasn't available for some reason, I think you have other guys you can plug in there. I really like Jabril Rawls. I think he's come a long way in the year he's been on campus. Edwin Joseph and Charles Lester and these freshmen DBs are Kai Bates. These freshman DBs are impressive. Jamari Howard before he got hurt. And so, to me, it comes down to that, especially those fringe players is, if they weren't available, how big of an impact would it be? And I feel like there's other guys that could play there. Having said that, Quindarius is probably one of the 10 most talented football players on this team. I mean, he is a freak show, I think. People saw it on that 50-yard kickoff return or block field goal return for a touchdown last year. We've seen it in practice and one-on-ones. The dude I think he's got a chance to be elite with that length at 6'2". He's got good ball skills. I mean, I love Quindarius, so I really hate that I did that, but I got to own it and wear it. So I'll do that because I think he should definitely be in the top 40.
He's a freak of an athlete, and he's so smooth for the size. Typically, Ira, you see a member of the secondary at that height. They're violent, they're choppy, they're not smooth and fluid. That's what jumps off the page to me about Quindarius. But
you expect him to be real grabby and all that. Man, he can play in the open field and run with these receivers and make plays.
If you're 6'2", you profile in the slot or you profile as safety, and you're a bruiser. You're Jamie Robinson, but man, he's smooth. I don't know how else to explain it, and he also can explosively, elevate and get up and high point the football. But we'll see if the reps are out there for him. One other guy that confused the issue, Ira, was Amarian Cooper coming back to Florida State. And teaser, he did make the top 40 list. Perhaps we will be discussing a player like Amarian Cooper here pretty soon on the Warchant Top 40. Actually, coming up next on the Warchant Top 40, we've got our first special teams player. We've got an offensive lineman, a wide receiver, a linebacker, and a member of the secondary that we just might have teased. So this is shaping up to be a really interesting year, Ira. And before we sign off, just your thoughts on how difficult this year was compared to maybe some other ones, because this is the first time people are hearing for you on the top 40.
Yeah, and when the top 40 first started at Warchant, I was still back at my old job at the newspaper. You were at the radio station, and those 13 and 14 teams were loaded, but we weren't here. We weren't taking part in the voting. So most of my time doing the voting has been from 2015 on, and maybe 2014 I might have been here, but definitely not before that. And this was by far the most challenging this has been. Not just, it was very challenging in the top 10. The top 10 a lot of times is kind of cut and dry. The last couple of years, Jordan Travis, he's number one, and you kind of go from there. Even the top 7-8 picks, like maybe one or two guys are out of order, but you know who they are. I think in this list, people are going to see there are guys that some people have in the top 5 or 8 that other people do not. And so it's going to make for some interesting calculations. And then as it goes on, it just gets tougher. Again, sometimes, when we're around 30, especially those last few years before Coach Norvell got here in his first 2 years, once you started getting to about 25 or 30, you're trying to come up with reasons to put guys in the top 40. Like maybe there's a case you can make to get that guy in your top 40. Now it's like, how can you keep guys out of your top 40? And so it's just it was really challenging. I hope people enjoy reading it. And I think by the end of it, you'll see that, it doesn't necessarily mean this team's going to go 13-0 again or even win the ACC, but they certainly have the talent to be in the conversation.
Yeah, this was I teased this on the Just Missing the Cut video. Our number 6 player, got 2 first place votes.
Right.
That doesn't ever happen. Usually a guy who garners a number 1 overall vote is going to be in your top 3. I mean, think about, some of the years Florida State had with, we're 14 with Jameis. Like Jameis was going to be number 1, but then behind him, you have Rashad Green. He might get a first place vote might come for Eddie Goldman or might come for Josh Sweat or, Jalen Ramsey. Like those guys are going to be in the top 3, top 4. Florida State, at least at the top, Ira, is loaded enough that the number 6 player in our top 40, which you're going to hear in some time now down the road, had 2 number 1 overall votes. It's going to be a fascinating debate here on Warchant TV. Again, hit the like button underneath the video. Subscribe to the channel. We will release every one of our number 1 through number 40 players on this channel. So if this is your first video, head on back and see how we count it all down and arrive at number 1. For Ira Schoffel, who has put in the written piece on the site right now, you can find it at warchant.com where you can see the voting breakdown. That's on warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. We will talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV for the 2024 Florida State Top 40.